Okay, so our kitty has been sleeping for a couple hours. Typically, with newborn kittens, especially ones that are this tiny, you should feed every 2 hours. So if we look in the box here, we can see our little foster baby here, just sleeping away. And notice how in the box, I haven't put like a single blanket or towel or t-shirt or anything like that. What I have put in here are fuzzy socks. Fuzzy socks are great whenever you're raising kittens. The main reason is that if I put a single blanket in there, as the kitty roots around or burrows or whatever, as kittens tend to do, then it won't get stuck under the blanket. If it burrows under a sock and the sock is just this wide, then it can find its way out. So I've always used fuzzy socks to put into a box. And notice that the box is also very small. For a kitten this size, you kind of want to limit how much the kitten can move around. You don't want it to do too much. I've actually been very surprised by this kitten because as small as it is and the fact that its eyes are not yet open, it can climb out of this box, which is why this box also has a lid to kind of prevent that from happening as well. So when I sleep, the kitten is in this box. Most of the time during the day, the kitten stays in a harness or like a sling that I put around my neck. And I like to use this during the day because the kitten sleeps in it most of the time, but whenever the kitten's hungry, it will start actually nudging against my neck, kind of like it's rooting to eat. So the neck sling is very, very handy if you're going to be raising foster kittens. So in a moment, we are going to feed this kitten, and I'll take you out, or take it out, and just give you a look. Say hi. We're going to take a look here at how to baby bottle feed a kitten this small. So this kitten is about 3 days old, and the eyes are still closed. And I have gone and purchased some formula for a kitten. It's kitty milk replacement formula. And what I use is KMR. KMR is a really good brand, and I really like it. And I've got just a standard kitten feeding bottle. You can buy these in sets that come with different size nipples. I'm using the smallest nipple size right now, clearly because I've got a very, very small kitten. But something additional that I've done, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this in the camera or not, but small kittens like this really have a hard time. They're still learning how to produce suction whenever they nurse. And so this bottle, it doesn't have like any negative airflow. It's kind of difficult, especially whenever they're just forming their suction skills, for them to get their milk out. So what I do is with the very small ones is I take these nipples and I actually cut a couple slits going crosswise against each other into the top of the nipple. So that makes the milk flow much more easily, and the kitty is able to get milk even though it's still very, very small. An additional thing I do is that whenever I close this lid, I don't close it tightly. Like I close it tight enough to where it doesn't leak, but I loosen it also just a little bit, like a half turn after it's closed to not leak, so that airflow can actually even go in through here as well. Look at this little guy. He's going to crawl out. Or she, we don't know yet, too young. Anyway, so this also helps with the flow of milk as the kitten is nursing. So we've got those things in place. I've warmed this up. Just like human babies, kittens need warm milk, and you should always, always test the milk before you actually give a kitten milk. And make sure that it's not too hot. You can put it maybe a little bit hotter than you would for a human baby to where it's warm to the touch here on the wrist. And that's because the body temperature of cats is warmer than humans. So, but this little guy definitely looks hungry, so we're going to try and give it some milk here. Now, I take a sock, one of these fuzzy socks, whenever I feed, and I actually wrap the kitten up in the sock. And the reason that I do this, there's a couple reasons I do this. One, when they're this small and they're still not very good at nursing, they make a mess. They get milk everywhere. And two, kittens are used to having a place where they can put their hands and kind of knead. It's like, I call it making biscuits. Some people call it mushing. But it allows them to press against something as they're nursing. And so this, even though it's not much space, gives a little bit of space so that the kitten can press against something whenever it's nursing. So those two reasons I put the sock around it, and actually this sock is a little bit lower than I like. Okay, so let's get a little bit more behind so that I can support the back here. Also notice that the kitten, this bottle here has, a couple ounces in there. It's actually more than the kitten's going to eat. Usually the kitten may eat on a very hungry feeding period, may eat half of this. But I put this much in here because you want to be able to hold the bottle basically horizontal. And if I have this much in there, then I can hold it almost horizontal fairly easily. Whereas if there's a lot less liquid in there, I have to hold it up. And then the kitten's in a position to where it has to look up in order to feed, and that's not very comfortable. So always put at least enough in there. You may be wasting some, but put enough in there to where you can hold the bottle basically horizontal. So to get the kitten to start rooting, you just kind of rub the nipple along the sides of the mouth. There we go. And then it will decide how deeply to take in the nipple. There we go. And you can see this one's very good at nursing off of a bottle. It's actually the fastest I've had a kitten. Uh-oh, milk sneeze. It's the fastest I've had a kitten pick up on a bottle. So, and you can see the dripping. So he got some milk in his nose. Poor little guy. He took it in too fast. So we'll take in. So you do want to make sure that you're not squeezing milk into the kitten as it's eating. I mean, you can kind of squeeze a little bit every once in a while if you feel like maybe it's struggling with the suction. But the last thing you want to do is get milk into the kitten's lungs, which is kind of what has happened here. Even though I didn't squeeze, I think maybe he got a little excited. So, oh, sneeze it out. At least it seems to be in the nose and not in the actual lungs. Okay, so we'll let it, okay, good job. Let's go back. We done? All right, so don't get so excited this time. So one other thing to note whenever you're bottle feeding kittens is that kittens have a tendency as they're nursing to fall asleep. And so you want to kind of, whenever it starts falling asleep, you want to make sure that it gets enough food for that nursing session. So you may have to kind of nudge it, move the nipple around a little to wake it up again to make sure that it gets a full feeding. So right now, considering the origin of this little kitty, we've nicknamed it Carrion, which is kind of mean, but very fitting. Are we done? We don't want to drink anymore? Well, that doesn't make a good video at all. Except I can show people what happens whenever kitties accidentally get milk in their nose. There we go. Good kitty. All right, so here we can see that it kind of tries to nurse until it falls asleep. Of course, it's kind of hard to tell with a kitty whose eyes isn't open yet. But he's still actively nursing. And we want to keep that going as long as we can. Kitties won't overeat at this age. And they need their nutrition very much. So the longest that it will eat, that's what you want to strive for. Without forcing. I mean, I kind of nudged for a bit there because we had a issue with taking in a little milk in our nose, and I knew that it hadn't eaten enough. So once we got over that issue, there we go. And see, now I feel like maybe we've had at least a decent feeding, not as much as usual. But enough that I can feel safe to put him down and wait another couple hours. So say hi, Carrion. Say hi. We got milk. Let's clean up some milk here. Because we're milky. And we don't want to be back in our bed wet. Yes. Yeah, I know. But wet is not good. Wet means cold. Okay, and let's reposition all your fuzzy socks in here. And put you back in there. Are we feeling active? So another sign that the kitty may not have eaten quite enough is if it continues to be very active after you put it back in the box. So I recommend watching for a little while, and if it continues to be very active, then maybe it hasn't eaten enough. Most kittens at this age, they're not real interested in playing or exploring. So typically, if they're not asleep, then they're hungry. And if they're hungry, they're not asleep. So we'll watch for a second and see if it settles down and goes back to sleep. Kitties spend, I don't know what the actual percentage is, but kitties this age spend almost all of their time sleeping and eating. And yes, we've settled down to go to sleep. So there you go. A little bit of a session there on how to feed very, very young kittens, bottle-fed babies.